The first day of the major war between Israel and Iran has demonstrated an unprecedented level of escalation for the Middle East, even though it might seem that the region is already accustomed to large-scale wars and conflicts. However, what we witnessed during the first day of the Israeli-Iranian conflict clearly indicates rather serious prospects for its escalation and shows that both countries, Iran and Israel, had been preparing in advance for such a serious turn of events. As of today, it can be said with a reasonable degree of certainty that the current situation in the conflict is highly unlikely to de-escalate or improve in any significant way within the coming hours or even in the next several days, given the ongoing tensions and lack of progress. Much will depend on the nature of Israel's strikes against Iran after Iran itself managed to deliver significant ballistic missile attacks on Tel Aviv and other areas of the Jewish state. It is obvious that the level of hostility is quite high. Israel is prepared to do whatever it takes to deprive Iran of the ability to continue developing nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, in Tehran, there is confidence that access to the development of nuclear weapons is precisely what guarantees the security of the Islamic Republic, and most importantly, the preservation of the regime established in Iran after the victory of the Islamic Revolution. So, in Israel, it is clear that preparations are being made for a prolonged confrontation and for possible measures to destroy Iran's oil refining industry, which in turn could lead to a significant surge in oil prices, not just for a brief period, but over a rather extended time frame. This would create new opportunities for Iran's allies, such as the Russian Federation, which, judging by the Kremlin's reaction, is counting on strengthening its own political role. Vladimir Putin even offered Russian mediation in resolving the situation to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. However, in reality, the Russian president is not interested in mediation, but rather in further escalation of the situation and an increase in oil prices. Retaliatory strikes by Iran against Israel could also deal an additional blow to the global economy, provided, of course, that Tehran still has enough capability to carry out such attacks. And this is not just about attempts to target Israel's energy sector or inflict serious damage on the country's economic facilities. It is also about the possibility of blocking the straits, which in turn could have a serious impact on the entire global economy and lead to completely unpredictable consequences in the coming months. Finally, it is entirely unclear to what extent Iran understands all the consequences of such a confrontation with Israel and, of course, with the United States. Since President Donald Trump is clearly now ready to continue the confrontation and expects that Israeli strikes on Iran will force the Iranian leadership to agree to the proposals put forward by the special representative of the American President, Steve Witkoff, during negotiations with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The only problem is that the Iranians had no intention of agreeing to such proposals. Instead, they were simply stalling for time in order to create additional opportunities for enriching Iran and, as a result, moving toward the development of nuclear weapons. At present, it is far from clear that Tehran is actually close to developing a weapon after Israel's strikes on Iran's nuclear reactor. Nevertheless, the following question arises: if the Ayatollahs regime survives, can we really say that the Israeli attack has definitively destroyed Iran's nuclear program, or is it merely a postponement of the creation of an atomic bonbon that, should the Israeli-Iranian war end with some kind of interim agreement, will only be accelerated so that in the future Iran can negotiate with Washington from a position of strength? After all, the Iranian leadership has the example of North Korea. Donald Trump held negotiations with that country's leader, Kim Jong-un, regarding nuclear disarmament, achieved no results, and now refers to North Korea as a great nuclear nation. It is obvious that the leaders of Iran would like to see exactly this kind of development and are counting on the fact that the leadership in the United States will be forced to reckon with Tehran if it acquires nuclear weapons. But in the case of North Korea, there was no question of Israel's security. And after all, the North Korean leader did not claim that his main goal was the destruction of South Korea. Whereas in the case of Iran, the destruction of Israel remains the main objective of Iranian foreign policy. In this situation, it is not only Iran that has no way out. There is no real way out for either Israel or the United States. Therefore, from the standpoint of actually reaching mutual understanding between Israel and the opposing sides, the situation currently appears absolutely unrealistic. It can be said that both the Iranian leadership and the Israeli leadership will try to achieve their maximum objectives in this difficult conflict. And that means the destruction of neighboring states, as we understand it. Israel would like to destroy the Ayatollah regime in Iran. And Iran would like to demonstrate that Israel is actually unable to defend its own security and is in a much more vulnerable position than during all the previous decades of wars in the Middle East. This could also serve as a lesson to the Arab world, which has not succeeded in destroying Israel. But now Iran appears to be close to this coveted goal. And since it is unrealistic to destroy the Jewish state, which clearly enjoys the support of the United States and has sufficient military capabilities to defend itself, it is equally unrealistic to overthrow the Ayatollahs' regime in Iran. There are no such opportunities today. So all that remains is to wonder at what stage of confrontation the current struggle between Iran and Israel will end, and whether it might lead to some unpredictable consequences that wars often bring about, even when both sides prepare thoroughly, yet fail to account for a whole series of random events that ultimately determine the outcome in ways that not even the most seasoned politician or the most experienced military leader could have foreseen. In the case of a war between Iran and Israel, we are most likely dealing with exactly this kind of development. Thank you, friends. Stay tuned to this channel and subscribe to it. Subscribe to my social media, to my Patreon channels that help support these resources, and use the sponsorship feature right here on YouTube. Peace to you all.